The wind screamed across the northern border the night Elara was cast out of the kingdom she had once called home. She walked without looking back, her bare feet bleeding against the frozen ground, while behind her the gates of the Alpha Kingdom closed with a sound like thunder. No one came to stop it. No one spoke for her. The only person who could have saved her, King Draven, stood on the palace steps with his arms crossed and his jaw tight, refusing to meet her eyes. 5 years earlier, Elara had been nothing more than a quiet Omega girl, taken into the royal court after her family's small border pack was destroyed. She had no rank, no power, and no expectations placed on her. She kept to the shadows, tended to the kitchens, and never once dreamed of catching the king's attention. But it was Selene, the woman chosen to be Luna, who saw Elara as a threat, long before Elara understood why. The night the old Queen Mother died from poison slipped into her tea, the entire court turned their eyes toward Elara. She had been the one to deliver the tray. She had no way to prove her innocence, no family left to speak for her, and no allies strong enough to stand against Selene's carefully constructed lies. Draven, blinded by grief and trust in his mate, did not ask questions. He simply signed the order for her exile and turned away. Elara had expected to die in the wilderness. Instead, she was found 3 days later, half frozen and barely breathing, by a small group of wolves who lived far from any kingdom's rule. They called themselves the Forgotten Pack, wolves who had been discarded, rejected, or hunted by kingdoms that no longer wanted them. Their leader, an old wolf named Bastion, carried Elara back to their camp and laid her before their healer, a blind seer named Mira, who had lived longer than anyone could remember. It was Mira who first noticed the faint mark hidden on the inside of Elara's wrist, a symbol shaped like 2 crescent moons overlapping. She traced it with trembling fingers and went very still. "This cannot be," Mira whispered. "What is it?" Elara asked, too weak to feel afraid. "You are not what they told you," Mira said. "You were never a true Omega. This mark belongs to the first bloodline, the family who created the pact between the kingdoms and the moon herself. Your power was not weak, it was hidden." Elara did not understand what this meant, not fully, not yet, but over the following months, as her body healed and her strength slowly returned, she began to notice things about herself she had never noticed before. She could sense emotions in the air the way older wolves could. She could hear conversations from far away when she concentrated, and more than once, she woke from dreams that felt less like dreams, and more like memories that did not belong to her. Mira explained it patiently, the way one might explain a truth too large to accept all at once. Long ago, before written history, the first Luna had bound herself to the moon goddess in exchange for protection over all wolfkind. Her bloodline carried a power greater than any alpha, greater even than kings, because only her descendants could confirm whether a mating bond was true or false. It was a power kings feared, because it meant no Luna could hide behind lies forever. Someone, generations ago, had worked to erase this bloodline from memory, hunting down its descendants until only scattered rumors remained. "Your family knew," Mira said. "That is likely why they were destroyed." Elara sat with this information for a long time. Anger simmered beneath her sadness, but she did not let it consume her. Instead, she asked Bastion and Mira to teach her everything they could. If her bloodline carried real power, she wanted to understand it before she ever thought about returning to the kingdom that had thrown her away. Training was not easy. Elara's body had been suppressed by hidden magic for years, likely placed on her as a child without her knowledge. Undoing that kind of binding took time, patience, and no small amount of effort. She spent her mornings training with the pack's warriors, learning to move with sharp instincts now growing inside her. Her afternoons were spent with Mira, learning about the old laws, the true history of the kingdoms, and the specific pact that had once given her family so much influence. The more Elara learned, the more she began to piece together what must have happened 5 years ago. Someone had wanted her gone, specifically gone, not simply removed from the palace, but erased from memory entirely. And the only person with enough motivation and access to poison the Queen Mother was the one person who benefited most from Elara's disappearance, Selene. It took nearly 2 years before Elara worked up the courage to visit the remains of her family's old territory. The Border Pack lands had been abandoned since the attack that killed her parents, left to rot beneath years of snow and silence. She searched through what remained of her childhood home, sifting through broken furniture and collapsed walls, until she found a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards of her mother's old study. Inside were letters, dozens of them, written in her mother's careful handwriting. They spoke of an agreement her mother had reluctantly signed years before Alara was born, a binding spell placed on infant Alara at Celine's family's request, meant to suppress her bloodline power until she came of age. The letters also revealed something Alara had never expected. Her mother had grown suspicious of Celine's ambitions and had begun collecting evidence of Celine's dealings with dangerous outside forces who wanted the first bloodline gone forever, so no one could ever expose a false Luna again. Alara sat on the cold floor of her childhood home for a long time after reading those letters. She finally understood. Her family had not simply been destroyed by chance. They had been silenced because they knew too much, and she had been exiled because she was the last piece of that dangerous puzzle still alive. She returned to the forgotten pack with the letters carefully hidden inside her coat. Bastien and Mira listened as she explained everything, their expressions growing more serious with every detail. "This changes things," Bastien said. "If this is true, the kingdom deserves to know. Draven deserves to know, whether or not he deserves your forgiveness." Alara did not answer right away. Forgiveness felt like a distant concept, something she was not ready to offer the man who had exiled her without a single question. But she agreed that the truth needed to come out, not for Draven's sake, but for the sake of every wolf who might suffer under a false Luna's rule. For the next 3 years, Alara continued training, growing stronger, and gathering more evidence. She sent quiet messages through trusted contacts within the kingdom, old servants and guards who remembered her kindness and had never truly believed she was guilty. Slowly, she built a network of allies within the very palace that had cast her out, all while remaining hidden from Celine's watchful eyes. She learned that Celine had solidified her position as Luna, that the kingdom's founding day celebration was approaching, and that Draven intended to renew his mating bond with Celine publicly before the entire court. This, Alara realized, was her opportunity. If she was going to reveal the truth, it needed to happen at a moment when no one could ignore it. Ceremony, witnesses, and undeniable proof all combined. On the night of Founding Day, the great hall of the Alpha Kingdom glowed with candlelight and moonlight streaming through tall windows. Nobles and pack leaders from across the territory gathered to witness the king renew his bond with his Luna, a tradition meant to reaffirm loyalty and strength for the coming year. Draven stood at the front of the hall, dressed in ceremonial robes, his expression unreadable as always. Beside him, Celine wore a triumphant smile, certain that her place was finally, permanently secured. The doors at the back of the hall opened before the ceremony could begin. Alara walked in, flanked by Bastien, Mira, and 2 former palace guards who had agreed to stand as witnesses. She wore no royal finery, only simple traveling clothes, yet she carried herself with a quiet confidence that silenced the entire room before she had even spoken a word. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Draven's expression shifted from confusion to shock as he recognized her. "Alara," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I did not come here for reunions," Alara said, her voice steady and clear enough to reach every corner of the hall. "I came because this kingdom deserves the truth, and I am the only one left who can give it." She raised her wrist for the room to see, the crescent moon mark now glowing faintly, a sign that could not be faked or denied by anyone who understood the old laws. Several Elder Pack leaders in the crowd immediately recognized the symbol and fell into stunned silence. Alara then presented the letters her mother had hidden, along with testimony from Bastien and Mira, confirming the binding spell placed on her as an infant. She explained, calmly and without exaggeration, what she had uncovered. That Celine had poisoned the Queen Mother years ago, framed Alara for the crime, and worked to suppress the First Bloodline's power, specifically to protect her own position on the throne. Celine's confident expression cracked as murmurs spread through the crowd. She tried to protest, claiming the evidence was fabricated, but her voice lacked its usual strength. Draven turned to her, his expression hardening with every passing second. "Is this true?" Celine hesitated, and in that hesitation, the entire hall found their answer. Cornered and desperate, Selene finally revealed something even Alara had not expected. "I bound her power because I had to," she admitted, her voice sharp with panic. "The old pact states only a true first bloodline Luna can confirm or dissolve a mating bond. I could not risk her ever discovering the truth." "What truth?" Draven demanded. Selene's eyes flicked toward Alara, filled with something close to resentment. "She was always your true mate, not me. I suppressed the bond recognition itself so you would never feel the pull toward her. Everything I built, our bond, our marriage, it was never real. It was a lie I created to secure my place beside you." The hall fell into stunned silence. Draven staggered back as though struck, the weight of 5 years of blindness crashing over him all at once. He turned to look at Alara, and this time, something shifted in the air between them, a pull neither of them could deny now that the suppression had been broken. Alara felt it too, a warmth spreading through her chest, undeniable and overwhelming. But she did not move toward him. She stood exactly where she was, her expression calm despite the storm inside her. "You believed her lies over 5 years of silence from me," Alara said quietly. "A bond recognized too late does not erase what was lost." Draven ordered Selene's immediate removal from the palace, his voice shaking with a mixture of grief and frustration. Guards moved quickly to escort her from the hall, her protests growing fainter with each step. The following weeks brought significant change to the Alpha Kingdom. Selene was formally tried for the death of the Queen Mother and sent to the same frozen borderlands she had once condemned Alara to, a fitting end to the lies she had built her life upon. Draven, humbled and desperate to make amends, did not simply expect Alara to return to his side. He understood, perhaps for the first time, that trust needed to be earned back through actions, not through the pull of fate alone. Alara remained cautious, allowing Draven to prove himself through consistent effort rather than grand gestures. She spent time reconnecting with the kingdom she had once called home, working alongside the Forgotten Pack to ensure other wolves who had been unfairly cast aside received fair treatment and second chances. Slowly, carefully, she allowed herself to consider a future she had never imagined possible. Months later, during a quiet ceremony far different from the extravagant celebration of Founding Day, Alara was formally recognized not as a returning Omega, but as the rightful Luna by bloodline and true bond. The kingdom's elders confirmed her lineage, the ancient pact was restored, and for the first time in generations, the balance between Alpha and true Luna was set right. Alara stood before her new kingdom, no longer the frightened girl who had once been cast into the snow, but a woman who had survived exile, uncovered the truth, and reclaimed her rightful place through strength and patience, rather than revenge. As she looked out over the gathered crowd, she felt, for the first time in 5 years, that she was exactly where she belonged.